Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we've got something pretty fun and cool to look at and to give you my full review on. Now this, guys, is a crazy big, ridiculous knife. This is the PMP Grizzly, also known as the Beast 2. It really is a follow-up to the PMP Beast, and it takes most of its design directly from the Beast. Now, by the way, if you see a little bit of a Medford flair here, that's because PMP Knives really kind of was inspired by Medford, and in fact, they started by wanting to do a collaboration with Medford that they weren't able to kind of work out. Anyway, the original Beast was fairly popular, and it was very much the same as this, just this crazy overbuilt thing that wasn't really meant to be practical or usable or the most elegant EDC option out there. It was just meant to be a beast, and and this is no different. Okay, I will roll a picture in here so you can kind of take a look, and you can see they're very, very similar. The biggest standout, of course, is this is going to have a flipper, which was not found on the original, and this little sort of skull crusher here is also a bit of a difference. So very, very similar still. Much of the design is maintained here, and I guess part of that is if you wanted a Beast, one of the originals, and didn't get your hands on one, this does present an opportunity for anyone who wanted to do that to go ahead and pick one up. Okay. So now that we've kind of got the background and introduction out of the way, let's start off with sort of the elephant in the room. And this knife, the size and weight on this is crazy, guys. It really is. It's not practical. It's not meant to be practical. In fact, if you take a look at the little info card that they include, which is really nice, I've got to say this is a great touch. So you can see here, handle is titanium, blade thickness, fat, weight, heavy. Okay, so they knew what they were doing, and they weren't going, they weren't trying to reproduce the Benchmade bug out. Okay, so let's get that part out of the way right away, and now we can get into the actual numbers. So 9 7/16 overall, 4-inch blade. In fact, it's a hair over 4 inches on the blade. 5 3/8 is the closed dimension. Okay, so that's this size here. It's nearly 2 inches thick, and the weight on this is a fairly massive 12 ounces. All right, and much of that is going to be attributed to the 1/4 inch thick blade that we have up front. All right, I will say this about it. It is very comfortable in hand. We've got 4 inches of grip area here, and it's quite a hand-filling blade knife. And yeah, this, I can't say I can complain about the ergonomics at all. It feels actually quite enjoyable in hand. And the other ergonomics, like, opening, closing, all that kind of stuff is quite nice as well. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but overall, yeah, this is a crazy big blade. Now, in preparation for this video, I did carry it for a couple of days, and all I can say is it's doable. Okay, I committed myself and purposely carried this constantly for 2 full days. Okay, now look, in the summer it may not work very well because you've got to pick your pants appropriately. You can't wear sort of lightweight, breezy type stuff. It just doesn't work. You've got to wear something a little more substantial, and you probably have to wear a belt. I know I had to wear a belt. This would actually start to pull my pants down a little bit as I went throughout the day, which is a little bit comical. And my kids had a good time kind of joking with me about that. But yeah, wear a belt if you're going to carry this around all day. And now, the next step in this whole discussion is the blade. And I've got to say, if you need to cut something with this, right, your typical EDC task, it will do just fine. All right, I cut a few different things. I wasn't slicing up apples or anything, but it will cut stuff. All right, the edge geometry is actually quite thin. It's a compound grind, so we've got a hollow grind here, a flat grind here, and all around, it actually cuts reasonably well, so long as, like I say, you're not doing something like cutting up apples or carrots or something like that, where it's gonna just want to split those type of things. All right, but if you're, I don't know, say cutting cardboard, or you're opening a package, or typical EDC tasks, yes, it's way more knife than you need for that. Excuse me, guys, but it will do the job. All right, so now let's talk a little more here. So take a look at this grind. Very, very impressive satin grind on this knife. I love satin blades just for this reason. Multi-directional. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It is 1/4 of an inch thick, so that is nuts. Look at this dimension. Look at this tip right here. Come on, focus. Why is it not cooperating? Come on, guys. There we go. Nope, still doesn't want to. There. Look at the amount of material you have coming all the way out to the tip. So this really is a monster of a knife. And now it doesn't want to go back in focus. Come on. There we go. Sorry about that. Struggling with the new phone just a little bit. Now, moving on, the blade is crazy. It's overbuilt. The grind is even lower, making this sort of more, ground more to be a tank than a cutting tool. All right, and again, that's just fine. I would love to do I would love to see some destruction tests on these. Sorry, that's not the channel for destruction tests. I'm not destroying a knife that cost me a substantial amount of money. I'm not doing it. But if someone else out there wants to do one, feel free. Make sure you record it and make sure you share it with the rest of the knife-loving public. Okay, moving on to lockup deployment action, however you want to call it. This is on phosphor bronze washers, which is definitely something you'd want to see in a knife of this nature, although you could have easily done bearings, because again, this is not a super practical knife. But if you want to make something and call it even a little bit hard use, I think washers are the way to go. And this has a pretty nice action. The detent is maybe a little soft, but honestly, the blade is so big and hefty that once you get it moving, look, it's going to deploy. The detent, let's see if I can, I'm going to take it off camera just for 1 second, guys, and just do a little quick test. So if I keep my hands off the lock bar and if I wing it pretty hard, I can get this knife to deploy sort of with gravity or with a wrist flick. I don't know how you would avoid that. This blade is so big and so heavy. Now, my main consideration when I'm reviewing a knife is, does this open when I don't want it to? And that it does not do. By the way, notice that fuller does allow me to thumb roll the knife pretty nicely. I can't, and I've tried. Yeah, I cannot spidey flick this knife. I've tried quite a bit, but I just can't do it. Maybe there's somebody out there who's able to, but that's not me. So overall, lockup and deployment, I actually enjoy it quite a bit. Everything is easy. And here's one of my main considerations, guys. Is everything comfortable? Is everything accessible? Could I, and this is definitely a knife that if you wanted to fidget with it on the couch or something, you could totally do it because everything is fairly comfortable. Everything is rounded. Everything works, without having to, you're not in here trying to rank this open with 2 fingers or something like that. Everything works pretty nicely in terms of opening and closing this knife, which is all we can really ask. Now moving on to the handle. Again, I'll just remind you that the handle design essentially comes from the Beast 1. It is it's not crazy thick. It's, getting towards 5/8 of an inch. Full backspacer here, bit of a glass breaker or skull crusher on the back, lanyard hole, single position pocket clip. You can see the cutout there on the titanium frame lock and the relief cut. Now, if you look inside, you can actually see a bit of milling, which I have to ask why. Okay, I mean, it's not like they were going for weight savings here anyway. I feel like you could have just left it as it was. And perhaps saved a little bit of money on the production side, but nonetheless, there is some milling internally, and it's not a bad thing at all. It just feels a little unnecessary to me. In terms of feel in hand, this is actually quite nice. Now, I've got to say, a knife of this size and a handle with this amount of girth it's pretty easy to get right because that thickness and that hand filling size means that it's going to be pretty comfortable. It almost can't help but be pretty comfortable. All right, so I already touched on the fact that everything else about the knife is pretty comfortable as well in terms of opening it, closing it, using it, all that kind of stuff. Now, normally we do a bunch of comparisons here, and guys, this is really not a knife that lends itself well to comparisons. I will throw out a couple of knives that you're familiar with. So this is, of course, the Mannix. And look, Spyderco Mannix is a fairly well-known knife, and it's even considered a full-size folder, but it's dwarfed by this thing. Not only is it dwarfed, but it weighs like, I think you'd need four of these, or I guess three of these, to get to one of the Grizzlies. I will throw in this guy as well. So here's an overseas made titanium frame lock that's 8.5 inches. It's not even that much smaller, but there's so much more girth and so much more material in the beast that you can kind of get a sense for it. So given all of that, what would you compare it to? Some of you are probably already shouting this at the screen. Of course, the obvious comparison is going to be to the Cold Steel 4MAX, and there it is beside the 4MAX. You can see the 4MAX is actually still a bit bigger. Now, look, guys, this knife doesn't try to be practical at all. It tries to be insane. This knife is insane, but it tries to be practical, and it offers actually a pretty good balance. This is a blade that will cut. I've cut apples with it, and it can do the job. It's maybe not the best at it, but it can do it. It's a little bit lighter. Now, this is still 10 ounces, so it's not like a lightweight option here, but if you really want something practical to carry around with you that's also hard use in a giant tank of a knife, probably the 4MAX would be the way to go. And by the way, they're actually pretty close in price as well. So you may see a full comparison between these two because there's actually quite a number of similarities. Let's get that guy out of the way and give you my overall sort of thoughts and conclusion here. Let's show the frame lock side again. Since I've been told by a couple of you guys that I don't show it enough, there you go. So this is a really cool knife. Okay, it's really interesting. It's really fun. It's definitely something that if you're carrying, I carry this around Christmas time. And so, you're at family functions and stuff, and people will be like, whoa, let me see that. And when one person took it out and started looking at it, it would get passed around the room, and people were just like, that is nuts. So it's something that people tend to enjoy, and that's the purpose of it. Okay, it's not meant to be a practical cutting tool that you're going to put in your kitchen drawer, put in your bug out bag to be the ideal tool for survival or defense or anything like that. Okay, the practicality side is not heavily considered in this design overall, and it's not meant to be. Again, I'd remind you, there's the description. Okay, so. Now that we've kind of got that portion out of the way, I would have to make two quick assessments. So first of all, it would have been cool to see, I don't know, something creative and different from an engineering standpoint. So this is going to be the beast. Let's do some kind of specialized lock that's really, really strong, or let's do something a little bit interesting and different. Maybe a really, really big stop pin here would be better. Maybe some kind of interesting relief cut, maybe something borrowed from Ferrum Forge or something along those lines, where they add some extra strength around the relief cut. Some little touches that say, hey, we've really thought about how to make this above and beyond, not just in the size and weight of the materials we've used, but in the features that we've built into the knife. The other thing is, this knife could actually work extremely well as a fixed blade, right? The mass of this and the weight of it and the overall the grind on this blade anyway, just overall would lend itself quite well to a fixed blade. So if anyone from PMP is watching, maybe a Beast 3 that was a fixed blade rather than a titanium frame lock would be an interesting option. And then I think we'd be having a very different conversation about practicality and utility, because I could see some uses for this where the grind and the weight would allow you to do some chopping tasks and stuff that you couldn't do otherwise. I think this is a really cool knife, okay? And it knows that it's not, the most practical, paramilitary 2 competitor or something like that. It's not trying to be that. It's trying to be its own crazy, awesome thing. And I think it does that very, very well. I'm really glad that PMP has chosen to make this, because it takes a lot of boldness. It's a pretty big risk to do something like this. People could look at it and go, really? That's not, that's just not for me. And guess what? A lot of people are going to look at it and say it's not for me. But if you have that, if you're kind of like me and you can appreciate something that's just a little bit crazy, that's just a little bit huge and ridiculous, then I think this is a great, great option. And the price point at $300, and I'm sure, and you'll get a bit of a discount if you use my discount code Sharp Stuff over at White Mountain Knives, will save you quite a bit. So you'll save $30 and put it down to like what, $270, which, guys, is not that bad. So that's the other thing to consider here. The price point puts it in a category that for a lot of enthusiasts, you could buy this and have it sort of as a safe queen or as a very occasional carry because of just the coolness factor of it. All right, there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to use that link down in the description. Using the link over to White Mountain Knives does help the channel a whole lot. Well, if you use it in conjunction with the discount code. Thanks in advance for doing that. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your comments on this knife. Is it just a hard pass for you? Do you think it's the dumbest thing ever? Or are you kind of intrigued and a little bit interested in this the way I am? All right, there you go, guys. Again, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.